involve this same self-occupancy of one sex with another sex to become a transgendered life force of some sort. The two sexes would become one. It was a beautiful lie which gave power to man. The contronymic lie, which said to her, he will cleave to you and make one of two, in direct contrast to the genetic truth, that a man would leave his father and mother and cleave a woman in two, removing from her any inkling of fatherhood and add to her motherhood in pain. Heron of Alexandria must have had woman in mind when devising x squared equals 0. How could he have imaginary numbers on the brain and not make the obvious connection that woman is also less than one, yet twice the power of man, and therefore imaginary? Even good old boys like Josh were at least as cynical about the plight of the fairer sex as they were about God, and conveniently so as ever so marginal a concern will out. Let me get to the end here. There we go. He suddenly remembered that the year before, another neighbor a few thousand miles to the north of him came to visit. After reading about Josh's dysfunctional relationship with what he quaintly referred to as his neck of the woods, his friend decided that it would be a good idea to see Oklahoma for himself. Josh tried to warn him, but somehow that had been interpreted as an invitation. He chuckled to himself, watching the tree outside his window rock back and forth in creaking contortions that made it seem as if it were about to snap off in a dozen places at once. And he recalled his friend acting much the same way, sitting on the couch in the living room, near the door that led into the backyard, unable to keep still, and wringing his knuckles until they were white with fear. Panic that resulted from watching a torrent of hail and surf that was moving in different directions, like colonies of flies slamming against the glass, spraying out of some unseen ocean in the sky. His eyes were locked onto the massive and seemingly immovable tree next to the patio, and whipped this way and that, twisting and bending like it was made of rubber. It was obvious that the huge bodark had become his lifeline. When the bodark goes, they all go. The sky was bursting with so much static that the boy's hair was standing on end, and it horrified him to realize that he could see it feeling out into the air with each lightning strike long before he heard the thunder roll in, almost like it was being coaxed away. A willing lightning rod, a bit like the first man. In fact, against all information to the contrary, Mania was speaking for him, and it said that the shaking of the ground was not actually caused by thunderclaps at all. No. It must have been far more sinister. An earthquake, or a volcano maybe, or at the outskirts of his grip on reality, a volley of missiles raining down destruction all over the town. And that the storm clouds were not clouds at all, but smoke rising out of the rubble. He even mentioned incredulously that he had seen videos of bombs being dropped on cities in some Middle Eastern country he couldn't pronounce. And it seemed less frightening than the storm outside. Josh couldn't tell if talking about it made him feel better or not, but he mentioned that there was a giant man-made lake about 15 miles to the west, thinking that would explain something to him. But all the foreigner heard was something about a giant man, and made a face that said he was trying to process that new piece of nonsense with all of the rest of the insanity around him. Josh even thought about telling him that they were under a tornado warning, which was why the wind seemed to be coming from so many directions at once. But he decided that his internet buddy was already onto the idea, teetering on the edge of his seat like he was ready to run at any moment, and had to work at remaining seated. It probably didn't do him much good staring heavenward through the skylights into the swirling maelstrom above them. Even so, Josh couldn't tell if he was praying or just chewing on the inside of his mouth. It was about that time that one of the branches of a tree gave out, almost landing on Aaron as he was coming back through the door. He hopped through the door as it crashed on the patio in a flurry of leaves and cold spray. Not only was he laughing as he skipped out of the path of death, he immediately stepped back out on the porch, beer in hand, and to the visitor's horror, flipped off the giant sucking colony of sky, in an inversion of a toast, something Aaron did when he didn't feel all that cheerful toward some stupid motherfucker's glass. Stuck out his middle finger to block them from touching. Folks usually got the point. And he yelled at the top of his lungs, "You missed me, dog." If the inversion of the toast had been in poor taste, the inversion of the Rainmaker's namesake seemed to send all the wrong vibes to the foreigner on the couch. What came next? Were they going to burn an upside-down cross in the backyard? He suddenly seemed relieved that it was raining, and said to Aaron in a kind of spineless sigh, "We should be underground or something, eh?" Aaron laughed like it was some kind of game, and out of respect for turns and the rotation, handed him a drum.